So today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where Saudi Arabia forms an empire. Now continuing on with the Empire series, which is a series that I recently brought back due to a lot of support on one of the videos, we are going to be doing Saudi Arabia next. Now I have done other countries in this region such as Egypt, Turkey, and Iran, but I've never actually done Saudi Arabia, which I found kind of weird because I thought I did, but I didn't, and I think I'm getting it mixed up with the Islamic Empire video. But nonetheless, we are going to be making a Saudi Arabian empire next. So if you guys do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Now for the 100th time already, we are aiming for 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year, so that leaves us with around 2.5 months to get around 24,000 subscribers. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No, but we're still going to aim for it. So if you want to help us out, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into this video. So throughout this video, Saudi Arabia will be colored in red, so whenever you see red, it means it is Saudi Arabia. Now Saudi Arabia is in an interesting geopolitical position, so it is in the Arabian Peninsula, and it borders some interesting countries. It borders some hostile ones such as Iraq and Yemen. It also borders some allies such as the UAE and Oman. Saudi Arabia's main enemy in this region will be Iran, and one of their allies is probably going to be Turkey. But Saudi Arabia's first task as an empire is to expand. Now Saudi Arabia is already technically a monarchy, so they don't have to go through that phase. They just have to go imperial. And to expand, they declare war on Yemen. Now Saudi Arabia and Yemen are already in a sort of conflict with the whole civil war happening. I myself don't know enough about it to talk about it, so I'm not going to, but all I know is that there's a lot of stuff happening in this region. And I also know that a Saudi Arabian invasion of Yemen would cause Iran to possibly retaliate against Saudi Arabia. So we're going to actually put that aside and pretend that Iran and Yemen have no relations. That's just so Saudi Arabia can expand. So Saudi Arabia's invasion of Yemen goes well, and they eventually reach down into the southern coast. From here, they take out different rebellious groups, and eventually we have the full capturing of the country. In the peace treaty, we see full annexation of Yemen by Saudi Arabia. So now Saudi Arabia has asserted itself as a power in the Arabian region. I mean, it already has, but it's going to expand upon its influence and power. Now, Saudi Arabia doesn't really border any countries that they would even want to invade from here. I think the only one they would even have thoughts of invading is Yemen. I also forgot to color in their island. But yeah, next up, they're going to be going after Iraq. Now, this is going to be interesting because an invasion of Iraq would possibly cause either Turkey or Iran to join in on the war, and that's exactly what it does. All three countries join in, and that's just because Iraq is surrounded by hungry countries who want more land, specifically Saudi Arabia. But if this were to happen, I'm pretty sure these guys would want to get involved just for the land grab. So Saudi troops push in from the south and start to head north towards Baghdad. We see Turkish troops push down from the north and Iranian troops in from the east. Now without a doubt, Iraq would probably start to break apart in this scenario as different groups try to come to power to stop this war, but it doesn't really have an effect on the overall front lines as each of these countries are going to continue to push in. We have Saudi Arabia eventually meeting the border of Syria, and from here they push out and start to connect up with Iran. This effectively cuts Turkey off, who takes over the rest of this region, and from here we have Saudi Arabia focusing in on capturing the southern portions of Iraq while Iran takes over the rest. Now of course the peace treaty isn't going to be exactly like this, but this is basically just a rough draft of it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Treaty of Baghdad. Alright, so taking a look at this peace treaty here, we can see that the borders of the Middle East are becoming worse. That's right, we all thought the Europeans messed up borders, but it's actually just Turkey, Iran, and Saudi Arabia doing it. Iraq was split 3 ways between Turkey, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, and overall this isn't looking too good for these guys, because Iran, who would most likely protect these guys, is now isolated into the Persian area, and Turkey and Saudi Arabia have been holding some talks recently, and it's concerning in this particular area in the world. But first and foremost, we have a union forming between Jordan and Saudi Arabia in order to form the country of Arabia. Now for the sake of this video and for the sake of the title, it's still going to be called Saudi Arabia, but just know that in this universe, the name is changed to just Arabia. So with Jordan under control of Saudi Arabia, we now have them reaching the border of Israel, Palestine, and Syria. Now there is one slight issue with Saudi Arabia attempting to expand any further, and that is the good old police force of the world, the United States of America. Now as of recently, relations between Saudi Arabia and the United States, as well as the UAE, have been sort of broken as OPEC has voted to decrease the production of oil for the United States and Europe. And this essentially just raises gas prices for everybody, and the US was not too keen to that, so they have threatened to basically stop being friends with Saudi Arabia, and if they cut relations, Saudi Arabia will most likely go to Russia, and we all know how that's going to go. So yeah, these guys, they aren't on good terms right now. So Saudi Arabia invading Israel would probably bring about war between the US and Saudi Arabia. So they make the smart decision of not invading Israel, but they do take Palestine. And with this, tensions between Saudi Arabia and Israel start to become a thing, as their real life tensions apparently weren't enough. But now we have Turkey and Saudi Arabia orchestrating a war against Syria. Now Syria, as we all know, is already in a pretty bad spot to exist in. Of course the region, and then of course the actual political crisis happening within Syria. It's not a good day to be Syria. Turkish troops flood in from the north, Saudi Arabian troops flood in from the south, and as in every other video, Syria gets absolutely demolished. And in this peace treaty, we have the split of the country between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. So now Saudi Arabia has basically become the Chile of the Middle East, as this is a very large country in terms of length. You know, they're expanding, they're doing so greatly, but some countries are becoming tired of their expansion. After Saudi Arabia eventually declares war on Lebanon, we have a coalition being formed against the country between Egypt, Iran, Lebanon, and then surprisingly Oman and the UAE. Now these two countries are pretty okay in relations with Saudi Arabia, so why would they declare war on them? Well, the answer to that is simple. They're expansionist. You don't want a country who's rapidly expanding to be on your border, because that just means you're a future target. So yeah, Saudi Arabia is going to be going up against Egypt and Iran, who are already both really strong countries, possibly stronger than Saudi Arabia itself. And then we of course have the nuisances in the south, the UAE and Oman. Kuwait doesn't join the war because they're pretty friendly with Saudi Arabia, and the same thing with Qatar. They kind of play both sides here. They're friends with Iran, but they're also friends with Saudi Arabia. And then Turkey also opts to stay out of this war for now, because they just, they just annexed all of this land right here. They want to kind of simulate that because this is very not friendly land. Whereas Saudi Arabia just sends in some police forces, they beat some people, and yeah, they just do what Iran is doing. So Saudi Arabian troops crossed over into Lebanon and easily managed to take out the country. While on the other hand, we have Egyptian troops crossing over into Saudi Arabia via this canal right here. And then we have Iranian troops crossing over into Arabia and Iraq. Now these two guys' goal here is to cut across Arabia and eventually meet up, which will help with supplies and logistics. But of course to do that, they're gonna have to first meet each other, and that is a challenge itself. Luckily though, we do have these two distractions in the south as they push into Saudi Arabia. They're getting a little bit of land until they are eventually stopped and the Saudi Arabian army comes to the borders. Back up north, Egypt continues to push into Saudi Arabia, pushing down the coast, while we have Iran starting to focus on going towards the center. Back down south, we have Saudi Arabia sweeping through southern Oman, and this causes the armies to kind of panic as another army comes crashing into the center of this little party. Eventually we have troops getting encircled and eventually killed. From here, Oman stops its offensive and mainly starts to focus on defense, as Saudi Arabia shows no sign of slowing down. Meanwhile, we have the UAE attempting to make a push into Saudi Arabia. This goes pretty well until it doesn't. Arabian troops immediately push back the UAE and pushes them all the way back to their border. Now all UAE troops are within their country, while we have Omanis still haven't figured it out, and I don't plan on figuring it out because I like to gamble. But anyway, these are only Omani troops, these are not UAE troops, so the whole defense thing, they're kind of pulled back to their country, and this leaves some flaws in the logistics, which causes the Arabians to push over, and finally we see them cross over into the UAE as well. So overall, the distraction down here is going as planned, as Saudi Arabia is focusing on taking these guys out. Meanwhile, up north we have Iran and Egypt going up according to plan. Speaking of going according to plan, Iran shoots across the Arabian desert, while we have Egypt doing the exact same thing. Eventually we have the meetup. Now logistics wise, this is as far as they planned. They also didn't really expect to be able to do this, but due to some problems down south, Saudi Arabia wasn't really able to reinforce this area. So now that they're connected, they have no idea what to do. This is really all they had. So they decided that they're going to take out the north and then proceed south. Now this area was recently annexed by Saudi Arabia, so they do have some ease pushing into it, as there's a lot of groups here who just want to not be a part of Saudi Arabia. They see Iran and Egypt as liberators and start to rise up against the Saudi Arabian installed governments. We eventually see a large portion of it declare independence and join Iran, and from here the remaining armies are forced out by the blue team. They reach the Lebanon border, push into the country and liberate it, and from here we have two large Saudi Arabian army groups who remain. So now let's go ahead and check in on the UAE and Oman. So without these two countries in the south, Saudi Arabia can completely focus itself back up north. Now of course there's going to be naval skirmishes in the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea, but I don't see either side being able to make a landing on each other, so for now those are kind of irrelevant. But with Saudi Arabian troops arriving back up north, we have the pushback of the blue team in the south, as a majority of their armies are up north. Saudi Arabia does catastrophically well as they cut off Egypt from Iran, and from here they push up and even connect with one of their army groups. So with a large portion of Egyptian troops surrounded over here in Arabia, we have Saudi Arabia going on the offensive. They push over into Egypt and start to take over this peninsula. They eventually meet the Suez and stop invading from there. When you think about it, that's kind of stupid to even invade in the first place. But they saw opportunity and they took it. So now the Sinai Peninsula is under Saudi Arabian rule. This little offshoot did come at a cost though, as the northern group finally gets captured. But nonetheless, Saudi Arabia has success pushing into the rest of their captured territory. We have them cutting off Lebanon from the rest of the blue team, which forces them to sign for peace. Meanwhile, Iranian troops are pushed back and Egyptian troops get further and further from their home country. Now, if this is your first Empire video and this is your first video on my channel, then first of all, hi, and second of all, in my videos I usually like to buff the empires just so that it has more of a, and that's just because it's more fair for the empire. So let's say I did in Albanian Empire, they really wouldn't be able to expand across from Montenegro, Kosovo, and North Macedonia because all the other countries over here are stronger than them. But if Albania is buff, they'll be able to take them on and they'll be able to actually create a sizable empire. So that's the reason I like to buff them. I just think it's more fun and entertaining. And that's exactly what's happening with Saudi Arabia here. So as these last remaining groups are pushed back to the Iranian border, we have the sides agreeing to meet for peace. So let's go ahead and take a look at that peace deal. So looking at this peace treaty here, we actually don't have anything happening to Egypt and Iran. Meanwhile, we have Saudi Arabia annexing all of the UAE and Oman. Now, the reason Saudi Arabia didn't really take anything from Egypt and Iran is because it is out of their interests. See, Saudi Arabia at this point is done expanding. I mean, they would really only want to take out Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. But then after that, they're kind of done. That would be all of Arabia, and from there, I mean, what else could you want? Maybe access to the Mediterranean, I could see that, so they might invade Lebanon again. But other than that, they're done. That's it. Now, of course, the two countries are going to pay war reparations towards Saudi Arabia, which will boost their economy. But yeah, that's a pretty simple peace treaty for them. So following this, we have the annexation of Kuwait, and then we meet the end of the video. So there's a curveball for you. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you guys have seen my most recent post on my community tab, then you'll know why this video is kind of crappy. But if you don't know, go check out the community tab, and that'll give you a pretty good explanation of why this video sucks. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.